Howdy, howdy, hey, it's Moss, and before we dive into this video, I'd like to share that my commissions are open again. So if you're curious about prices, I have a link to all that stuff in the forums below. Alright, that's all. Enjoy the video. I've recently come to an understanding of colors, at least a decent amount, more so of an understanding of coloring within my style. And I'd like to share with you guys my learning process. So, learning or figuring out a coloring style, or a style in general that suits you, can be frustrating, and it can take a bit of time. About 2 years or so ago, I found a style that I liked, but it just wasn't cutting it for me. In a sense, it wasn't consistent, so I liked how it looked, but it wasn't enjoyable to sit down and draw, and it was becoming a seriously frustrating process for me. So if you're going through something similar, I completely understand, and I hope this video can help you kind of break out of that, I guess, or get you on a point in your artist journey where it's not as frustrating and you have something to work towards. I'm not too sure. Anyway, a few things that helped me were like to break down a series of questions that helped me break down a style to get into like the logistics of it, because once I understood what I was doing, it was easier to create. It was just easier to create in general, more enjoyable. So one of the first questions I asked was, do I like doing line art? And honestly, my instant answer was no. I have never liked doing line art, ever. Even with my most recent Speed Paint Max, I did line art, and it just doesn't, it doesn't look bad. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. The coloring isn't it, the pose is fine, but it feels stiff and doesn't have that color out of lines look. I love sketchy and messy artwork, especially as a perfectionist in every other portion of my life. This is just kind of like the one place that I don't need to be a perfectionist and worry about, is it perfect, is it not, do I need to start over? Like, it's not a school assignment, it's not for work. I mean, it's kind of work, but it's work on my own terms. You know, it's great, I love it. So anyway, once I figured out that question, I went on to ask myself, what other artists have a messy look to it? You know, like their style. So like, what kind of coloring style do they use? What kind of techniques do they use? Do they use a bunch of different textures, different brushes, different kinds of strokes, all that kind of stuff? And what is the main thing that I like about the art? So like, what is the one captivating thing that draws me to their piece? And once I looked at a bunch of different artists that inspired me, trying to figure out the main thing in their pieces that draws me to them, like, I can't pronounce this artist's name, but in their bio they also go by Tammy. I love her use of main colors in her drawings, and the way that she draws backgrounds is just very eye-catching. It's very satisfying and soothing to look at. I really love it. And then there's this other artist, Retrodile, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who has a satisfying way of using high contrast and fun shapes to create recognizable characters and all that stuff. And lastly, we have Blue Biscuits, who has a beautiful symbolism in her works, and the way that she colors is just really eye-catching and so unique. It's really satisfying and fun to look at. So of course, if you're somebody who loves doing line art, you just ask the same questions, but look for artists who use that similar style that you're looking for. Like, is it the way that they incorporate the line weight in their pieces? Is it like how they manage it to make it look lively despite the line work being so in your face? You know, like, there's a lot of cartoony styles out there that I personally enjoy that have that big bulky line art, and then they just still make it look so lively, and that's something I've always struggled with, so I've just dropped doing line art. I've never liked it. Like, for me personally to draw, but I've enjoyed seeing it in other pieces. And like, what kind of techniques do they use that you like, and so on and so forth. I know an artist personally who's great at line work and does amazing pieces. She's my friend, she goes by That One Tay, and I'll link her and everyone else that I've mentioned down below. And I seriously suggest you guys check these guys out. They're so like talented and amazing, and I'm sure you guys will love their work. Okay, so with those questions out of the way, the next step I took was research a bunch of research. I looked up tutorials, I studied artworks I loved, I took notes on literally everything, and I practiced, and honestly, there's never avoiding going back to the basics, drawing shapes, coloring squares, all this stuff. And there's always great reference photos on Pinterest, and I know there are a lot of great tutorials on YouTube as well that go over the basics of color theory, which honestly, oh my gosh, my phone's doing a weird thing. Oh, okay, anyway, I'm sorry. So anyway, there's a lot of reference photos on Pinterest, and there's a lot of great tutorials on YouTube that go over basics of color theory, which I personally believe every artist should get to know, like at least kind of a grasp on it, because once you do get a grasp of it, everything else kind of falls into place when you color. And even just understanding values at a baseline is like imperative, so that your artworks don't look flat or muddy or you can't see which is which kind of thing, which I've always personally struggled with. So if it's something you struggle with, I implore you to go check out some tutorial videos. There is a bunch on YouTube, a bunch of great ones. And so when I first attempted to apply what I've learned to my artwork, my piece didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And I learned so quickly that I'm terrible with backgrounds. And things got way too muddy so fast. There wasn't enough definition in the face or lighting, and it became very single-toned, except for literally the sleeve of her jacket, which ended up being the center focus, which I didn't want. That's just how it turned out, and it's just, it's not a horrible piece. It doesn't look terrible. It's just, it could have turned out so much better, and I'm probably gonna redraw it later on. Anyway. And then, literally, I worked all day on this piece, and I kept getting so frustrated, and it just, like I said earlier, wasn't turning out the way I wanted it to. And then the next day, I sat down, and I drew, a really quick headshot. I wasn't even thinking about it. I just wanted to get coloring practice in, because I figured out the style. I wanted to practice it. I wanted to get good at it, and 10 minutes later, I put down the flat colors, colored it, and I was like, why do I like this so much better than this other artwork I literally spent hours on? And then I went and drew again, and this time with my OC Alice, and I loved it also, and I got a better understanding of my process. Basically figuring out what I like to do, what I didn't like to do, the brushes I like to use, the brushes that didn't suit me, which I can go on in another video, I guess, if you guys really like this one. And once I kind of got a baseline of that, what I liked, didn't like, and all that stuff, this process got a bit easier for me, and then now I'll be able to replicate it, yeah. And this process of figuring out what you like and don't like is kind of a never-ending process, since artists, we're always learning. But I'm hoping after seriously 11 years of drawing, I finally have a style that will remain pretty consistent. Of course, everything's open to improvement. It might change again in the future, but I'm hoping this is a staple baseline, because my goal as an artist is to be recognized, for people to see my work and be like, oh, that's Moss, I want to be recognized in the community, I guess, which, I'm pretty sure every artist out there wants to be recognized, and I want to have a unique trait that people will see in my artwork and be like, oh yeah, this is that artist. Because I took one art class in my teen years, and the one thing about artists that we studied is that there was one thing that stuck out about every single artist, and I'm going on a tangent, I'm way off script, but that is the one thing about every artist, is that there was a single thing that made them unique, whether that be the style, the composition that they used, just the techniques, all this stuff, the paints they used. And so that really stuck with me, and ever since then I've wanted something about my art to stick out. What that is, I'm not too entirely sure yet. It'll come later on in the years, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm way off script. I'm rambling now. But anyway, I hope this video helped you guys at least a little bit in some ways. I've never done tutorials before, and this wasn't exactly meant to be one. It just is kind of a baseline of a walkthrough of my process. I also recall a good few of you guys wanting a coloring tutorial from years ago, 2-3 years ago, from my YouTube and TikTok. And every time I sat down to create it, I had no idea what to do, what to say, what to put out there, since I couldn't remember what I do. It just wasn't consistent every single time. So if I put a tutorial out there, it just I couldn't even put one out there, I guess. It just wasn't working out. So I ended up going radio silent for like almost a year. In general. So sorry about that. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them in the comments, and I will see you guys all next time. Thanks for sticking around my random rambling tangents. Okay, bye.